Hi, welcome back to My Smart Learning. This is a lesson for Year 12s and Year 13s. It's your A-Level Biology lesson. Useful for any Year 11s thinking about going on to doing A-Level Biology too. We've been looking at the respiration topic over the last couple of times. We've looked at glycolysis so far, and we looked at the link reaction and the Krebs cycle. We're looking at the last stage of aerobic respiration, something called oxidative phosphorylation, also known as the electron transport chain. But before we start that, the objective, how do I release energy to survive? We need to get your virtual high five. So, quick quiz. Get all 5 right, you get a virtual high five from me. You can't buy those in the shop, remember. And question 1, what is the equation for the link reaction? Number 2, what are the main coenzymes that we talked about last time? Number 3, what happens to pyruvate? Number 4, what is the Krebs, why is the Krebs cycle important? And number 5, what does oil rig stand for? What's the whole purpose of it? Have a go at answering those. Pause the video if you need time to do that. And once you're ready, you can unpause and we'll go for the answers now. So, what is the equation for the link reaction? Now, if you remember, the link reaction starts off with pyruvate. The pyruvate then has plus NAD next to it, and then it has plus the coenzyme A. Now, what we remembered is that the pyruvate loses the carbon dioxide, it loses some hydrogen, so that therefore the hydrogen joins onto the NAD, the carbon dioxide goes off, you got acetate left behind, but that acetate will join onto the coenzyme A. So the other side of that equation, so you got pyruvate plus NAD plus coenzyme A, arrow gives you acetyl coenzyme A, you get reduced NAD plus carbon dioxide. So that's the answer for question 1. What are the main coenzymes? Well, the main one was NAD, and that becomes reduced. So NAD becomes reduced, so it becomes reduced NAD. You've also got FAD in the Krebs cycle, so both of these guys in the Krebs cycle, FAD, and that also becomes reduced FAD. And in photosynthesis, you've also got NADP, which becomes reduced NADP. So what happens to pyruvate? I think I've just already mentioned that. The pyruvate loses the carbon dioxide and it loses hydrogen, therefore it becomes acetate, and the acetate joins onto coenzyme A to make acetyl coenzyme A. Why is the Krebs cycle so important? We talked about that at the end of last lesson. We said it converts macromolecules to make them into smaller molecules, and it's an immediate source of lots of different substrates so that they can make other things like amino acids and fatty acids. And let's go through that quickly there. We also said it produces the hydrogen atoms that we talked about for the NAD to be reduced so it can go on to the electron transport chain. And also, the 4 carbon molecules can be regenerated, so there's no backing up, it doesn't build up. So, the Krebs cycle, we said that one, why it's important. And what does oil rig stand for? It stands for oxidation is the loss of electrons, and reduction is the gain of electrons. But also, you need to know that oxidation is where you gain oxygen, and reduction is where you lose oxygen. And vice versa, oxidation is the loss of hydrogen, reduction is the gain of hydrogen. So this is the really important bit today. This oxidative phosphorylation is all about oxidation is the losing of hydrogen. That means something else is gaining hydrogen. Reduction, something else is being reduced, it's gaining hydrogen. However, when you lose the hydrogen, you become oxidized. There's these spare electrons because you have this hydrogen losing the electron, and that electron then is the really important thing in the electron transport chain because it goes down these carriers. You've got protons left over because you remember a proton plus an electron is a hydrogen atom. You need to really get your head around that concept. What do you need to know then? You need to know what oxidative phosphorylation is, where does it take place, explain how ATP is synthesized during oxidative phosphorylation, explain the role of oxygen in aerobic respiration. Now here is where oxygen all comes in. Remember the first 2 lessons? Didn't mention oxygen at all, but we kept getting carbon dioxide getting made. I said, look, oxygen doesn't happen till right at the end. We call it the final electron acceptor. That's why if you don't breathe, you don't get the oxygen in. Photosynthesis comes to a grinding, not photosynthesis, respiration comes to a grinding halt, and therefore you die. So, describe, the oxidative phosphorylation. Where does it take place? Well, it takes place in the cristae, in the folds, in the space between the in the mitochondria. Remember, there's a double membrane on the mitochondria. You've got the outer membrane and you've got the inner membrane, which has got the folds. Those folds are called cristae. So the electron transport chain, this oxidative phosphorylation, is happening in the space between the two membranes. So remember, the inside is called the matrix. So this bit here is the matrix. Okay, this blue bit's the matrix, and then this bit here is the inner membranal space. So this is the inner membrane, the cristae membrane, and then the outer membrane will be over here somewhere. So this space in between is where all of this electron transport chain is happening. This blue bit is the mitochondrial matrix. So if you look at this diagram, it looks very similar to something that we saw in the photosynthesis topic. We talked about photoionization and the chemiosmotic theory. This is the same thing. This is the chemiosmotic theory too, but it's in respiration. It's a very similar process. There's no light involved. There's no photoionization here, where water gets split by light and then releasing those electrons on the hydrogens. Here though, what we've got, these hydrogens are brought by the reduced NAD. So reduced NAD is actually known as NADH, because there's two of them there. So here's my reduced NAD. I've also got reduced FAD there. Look, got FADH2. These guys give electrons to this electron transport chain. They are pumping hydrogen. So these electrons here going through this electron transport chain, what they're doing is they're giving, they're providing the energy from a high energy level to a low energy level. They're providing the energy to generate ATP. What's that ATP for? That ATP is to pump hydrogen ions against the concentration gradient from a low concentration here to a higher concentration in the inner membranal space. Remember, that's the cristae and that's the outer membrane here. That little space in between, you're pumping hydrogen ions into there. Well, where did these hydrogen ions come from in the first place? NAD was reduced, FAD was reduced, NAD was reduced in glycolysis, in the link reaction, in the Krebs cycle. So those three stages. FAD also was in the Krebs cycle. So these guys have picked up the hydrogens and brought them to the electron transport chain, the main event of the evening, okay, of our respiration. It's the climax of our movie. If you imagine, we had the beginning of the movie, we had some action scene, then we had the middle bit of the movie, which is your Krebs cycle, okay, things kept going round and round in circles. Now this is the climax. This is where, like, the Avengers assembles, where you get the big fight scene at the end where you want to destroy Thanos, right? Everybody comes together. This is where the party's at, all right? So what's going on? You've got your low concentration of hydrogen. Those hydrogen ions came from your reduced NAD and your reduced FAD, okay? They give away their hydrogen and they give away the electrons. So if I break, because it's a neutral atom, these are neutral molecules, sorry. If I break the hydrogen away, well, there's a bond. It's a covalent bond. The bond will have hydrogen joined onto it, but there's an electron there as well. The hydrogen atom has an electron. That electron jumps on this electron transport chain through these carriers, these protein carriers there. The hydrogen ion that's left over gets pumped from a low concentration to a high concentration against the concentration gradient. For that to happen, you need ATP. I'm not talking 20p short of a pound. I'm talking about ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that is why those electrons are moving along here, because those electrons going down energy levels is allowing you to get ATP. That ATP then is pumping the hydrogen ions this way. But what does that do? It's basically a biological battery. That's what it's doing. It's making it so that you've got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of hydrogen ions there, H pluses. you're going to get a build-up. What's going to happen with that build-up? You're going to get this driving effect from a high to low, facilitated diffusion, high to low. These protons are going to be flowing through there. That is an electrochemical gradient. It's a current, it's flow of charge. It's electric current. That electrical energy then, that electrochemical energy, what's happening to it is it's providing the energy to convert ADP plus PI into ATP. You need an enzyme to help that happen, to lower the activation energy for that. So ATP synthase is on this molecule here. Remember the stalk molecule we talked about? This protein molecule here, ATP synthase is attached to this protein molecule here, and we're getting lots and lots of ATPs made. We're getting ATPs made over here. Some of it's used to pump the hydrogen ions over there. We're getting loads of ATP molecules made here. And you get this recycling of these hydrogen molecules. But I can't keep having hydrogen molecules forever, because eventually you'll just get this build-up of hydrogen ions, and that will lead to something called acidosis, and you will die because you've got too many hydrogen ions building up. You need to mop up these hydrogen ions and these electrons because there's too many. So who comes to save the day at the end of the movie? There's always somebody at the end of the movie that comes to save the day. You know, the whole thing is like, you know, everyone's going to die. The whole movie's everyone's going to be sad, and you know, it's going to be chaos at the end. And suddenly somebody pops their head up to save the day. The superhero could be, I don't know, Rambo or Iron Man, or not Thanos because he's the bad guy, he loses. But sorry, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie. Who comes to save the day here? It's oxygen. Oxygen has come to save the day. There we are, half a molecule of oxygen. Look, little oxygen over here, because you end up with one water molecule. So that's what I have to do, is half a oxygen molecule there. So half a mole there. So the oxygen, each oxygen molecule, remember, will bind to 2 electrons. The 2 hydrogen ions, you'll end up with water. So what is the purpose of oxygen? This is a very, very important sentence I'm going to say now. That is pretty much guaranteed. When you get a question on photosynthesis, I keep saying photosynthesis. When you get a question on respiration in the exam, and the word oxygen or anything associated with oxygen comes up in that question, time and time again, it's a guaranteed mark or 2 marks. What is the point of the oxygen? Why is the oxygen in that question? The sentence you need to say is this: oxygen is the final electron acceptor. Learn that, burn that into your brain. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor. Repeat after me. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor. If I had some music to go with it, I would. If I could make it into a rap, I would. Learn that sentence. It's really important because it always comes up in the exam and people always lose a mark when it's a simple sentence to remember. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor. Curtains close, end of movie, credits come up, because that is the end of respiration, of aerobic respiration. Oxygen is the hero at the end that mops up all the baddies to stop you from dying. It mops up all the electrons, it mops up all the hydrogens. Okay, those hydrogen ions join on with those electrons, join on to the oxygen. You get something that is not poisonous and is good and can just go out of your body. It's the product from respiration, the other product from respiration, which is water, H2O. Because remember, you get carbon dioxide plus water. You breathe them out. Glucose plus oxygen. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor. It doesn't join onto the glucose. Because remember, where the carbon dioxide comes from, it comes from the breakdown of that glucose molecule itself. So the glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide from the breakdown of glucose plus water. There you go, Barney, water, H2O. Where did it come from? It came from oxygen joining on to the electrons and the protons. Where did the protons come from? They came from the reduced NAD and the reduced FAD. Okay, those electrons also, the electrons also came from those guys as well when they broke up. Okay, so you've got these carrier molecules. Now, I'm going to simplify this now into this diagram here. This is basically showing you what's going on at these proton carriers here. So what's actually happening? The ATP that's been generated is allowing the protons to be pumped against the concentration gradient from a low to a high concentration, actively transported across these channel proteins. Okay, so here's my carriers then. Here's my NAD. Remember, it becomes reduced NAD because electrons from glycolysis on the Krebs cycle and the hydrogen, remember, because the hydrogen comes from the acetyl coenzyme A joining onto that 4-carbon molecule, and also from the hydrogen from your triose phosphates. Those triose phosphates give the hydrogen to and the electrons to the NAD. They're being reduced. There you go, reduced NAD. That can also become reduced, remember, reduced FAD as well. We get reduced FAD, we get reduced NAD. What do? There's these carrier molecules. Here's the carrier molecules. There's a carrier molecule, carrier molecule, carrier molecule, carrier A, B, C. A, B, K. So, A, B, C. There's your carrier molecules along the membrane. What happens? That electron gets transferred to this carrier molecule A. And it's like they, look at these arrows, they're coming down, that arrow is coming this way, that arrow is going this way, and they touch, and they like kiss, like that way. So what happens is like pass the parcel. The electron from the reduced NAD gets passed on to carrier A. Once it's kissed it and passed it on, look at that pink peachy colour or yellow colour there, it becomes more of a pinky colour because that's got the electron now, so that's now reduced, it comes this way around. But when that energy, when it's transferring that electron, that energy of transferring it from one molecule to another molecule, the energy transfer can be used to generate an ATP. ATP. So you get ADP plus PI makes an ATP. That ATP is going to be used to actively pump hydrogen ions from low to high concentration. But look at this arrow here. That's showing you the increasing energy level. So it's going up there. So here, higher energy level, it goes to a lower energy level, and so on. So that's what's happening here. So that reduced carrier A then, if you notice, that is going around this way. So that carrier there is becoming reduced when it touches that one there, the reduced NAD. So that's the reduced carrier A. That reduced carrier A will touch carrier B, and that electron is being transferred from that carrier onto that carrier, from there to there, and that carrier B now becomes reduced. You've got another ATP being made there. That reduced carrier B there goes round, touches carrier C there, and when they touch and kiss there, again, it's passing the electron from carrier B onto carrier C. Now the carrier C has gone pink because that's now reduced. That has now been oxidized. So when they're yellow, they're being oxidized. When they go pink, they're being reduced. When they're pink there, they've got the electron. It's like pass the parcel. Just follow the arrows. Look, when they touch, this one becomes pink, that one becomes yellow. This comes up. When that touches there, that becomes pink, that becomes yellow. When that touches that one there, when they kiss that way, that becomes pink, that becomes yellow. Eventually, this can't carry on forever because the electrons need to get mopped up. The hydrogen ions need to get mopped up. Who comes to save the day? No, not Iron Man. Oxygen Man. There, oxygen. Oxygen is what? Don't tell me you've forgotten already. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor. There you go, look, oxygen is the final electron acceptor. It picks up the electron from there. So that now is no longer reduced, that's now oxidized. This oxygen now is now gaining the electrons, so the oxygen is now reduced because it's gaining those electrons. And the oxygen joining on with the protons becomes pani, becomes water. Okay, so that is the electron transport chain, probably the most complicated bit of all of the bits that we've looked at so far in respiration. So obviously if you want to rewind and go back over certain bits, please do so, but use the textbook, use other sources as well. There are other YouTube videos out there too. It's not just me out there. See if you need to go through it. Obviously, next term, we will be going back to school at some point in June, July, I think. So we'll probably have some face-to-face time. We have been having Zoom lessons. It's good to see you all again via Zoom. So thanks to Miss Martin for those lessons. So before we finish off, the last little bit then, what are the alternative substrates then? Usually it's always glucose, isn't it? Glucose gives us our 2 pyruvates to give us all that energy. Now, lipids, fats can also give us extra energy. Why? It gives you more than double the energy of carbohydrates. That's why eating fatty foods makes you fat, because it gives you twice the amount of, or more than twice the amount of energy than carbohydrates. Carbohydrates give you loads of energy. Remember, anaerobic respiration gave us 2 net ATPs, whereas aerobic respiration gives you a net of about 38 ATPs. So instead of 2, you're getting 38. So much more multiplier or multiples of the 2 that you get for anaerobic. That's why anaerobic is very inefficient. Aerobic is a lot more efficient, but that 38 happens mostly from the ETC at the end, the electron transport chain. At the beginning, we didn't get that many ATPs in total. I think we got, was it 4 in total from the glycolysis, and after the link and the Krebs cycle, we only got 4. So the other 34 happens from the electron transport chain, which is the oxidative phosphorylation. Remember we talked about substrate level phosphorylation? So the glycolysis has substrate level phosphorylation. The Krebs cycle has substrate level phosphorylation. When we talk about substrate level, we're talking about it's happening because of the chemical reactions of those substances. Oxidative phosphorylation, what this actual word means, I should have mentioned at the beginning, is the redox reactions, those carrier molecules, the electrons coming down energy chains. The fact that something's being oxidized, something's being reduced, that's generating the ATP, that phosphorylation. The phosphorylation means inorganic phosphate is being added onto ADP to make ATP. So, glucose, your brain can only use glucose though, but other parts of your body can use other sources of energy. So if you're fasting, if it's your Ramadan and you're fasting, then your body has to be using up all the glucose. It's got nothing else to burn as energy source. Hence why it's a good time to lose lots of weight and stuff, because it will start burning off fat. It will also start burning off proteins as well. But how does it work? Lipids more than double. Why? Because there's lots and lots of hydrogen atoms being released from lipids, and it's those hydrogen atoms that you need to join on to NAD and FAD for them to get reduced. So if there's loads of hydrogen atoms around, that's what happens. You hydrolyze the fatty acids and the glycerol. You end up phosphorylating it from these the glycerol. The glycerol actually is the thing that gets phosphorylated into triose phosphate. That triose phosphate then can join into like you do from glycolysis, can go and join into the Krebs cycle, and therefore the fatty acids can be converted into the 2 carbon molecules, and then the acetyl coenzyme A. Okay, so the triose phosphate goes to glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, because remember you get the TP made in glycolysis, that can go onto the Krebs cycle, but that's from the glycerol. But the fatty acids though, from this bit, they get converted into 2 carbon molecules, and then the coenzymes A, the acetyl coenzyme A, and that's going to join onto the Krebs cycle as well. So therefore you got some energy being released there, but there's more hydrogen atoms in fats, in lipids. Proteins, however, not that efficient at releasing energy. So your body will rather burn glucose, because glucose is a ready source of energy. Fats, however, your body does like to go for proteins as well before it goes for fat. It hydrolyzes the amino acids. You get something called deamination, which means removing the amino group, the NH2 group, away from the protein or the amino acid. Eventually that get converted into pyruvate, and that's basically the beginning of or the end product of glycolysis. So you get that. If you've got 4 or 5 carbon compounds, they get converted into intermediary substances in the Krebs cycle. So you get stuff to get entered into the Krebs cycle. So that's if you're fasting and all the glucose in your blood goes really, really low, your body will start to break down fat and break down proteins. And that's why when you watch things like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, They go in as fatties and they come out really as skinnies because they've been in the forest. They don't let them die. They let them have their rice and beans, whatever they have, their beans, but they have just enough energy to survive. The body starts to break down all the excess fat and protein, or not excess protein, but excess fat. But the body does eventually break down the protein as well, and hence why they lose lots and lots of weight. Then they come out, and because they're all celebrities, they start drinking the champagne and having their big bun fights, and then obviously put on the weight straight back on. But fasting is a very good way of burning all that fat and that protein to lose lots of weight and reduce your chances of type 2 diabetes. So, there's so many questions for you guys to have a go at. Hopefully you've learned something today about aerobic respiration. That's the end of aerobic respiration. So we looked at glycolysis. We looked at together the link reaction and the Krebs cycle, the middle of the movie, and at the end of the movie today was the electron transport chain. Oxidative phosphorylation is the other word for that. Hopefully that's not too bad. Go over it if you need to go over it. And the next time I'm going to look at anaerobic respiration to finish off this whole topic. So hope you're keeping safe and well. I hope to see you guys next time on the Zoom lessons, and take care for now. But before I forget, if you got all 5 questions right in the virtual high five quiz at the beginning, then that's fantastic. That's a virtual high five from me. See you next time.